Ever since Henry Cavill announced that he's being replaced as The Witcher in Season 4 by Liam Hemsworth, we thought this would be an excellent time to throw Steven's name into the ring as another possible replacement. Now, he's already tried out being a Jedi in our Star Wars Force Pull video.
I was just wondering if I need to put pants on. I don't know very many Jedis that run around with shorts on.
As well as a drone racing pilot, and really to no avail, but as they say, 3 times a charm, so for his audition, we'll use After Effects to show what he'll look like once he takes one of the Witcher's potions. Alright, so first we need to create the black veins that appear on his face once he takes the potion. For the vein pattern, we're going to use this free cracked ground texture that we got from Pexels.com, since the cracks have the exact look that we're going for. We'll add a tint effect to make it black and white, then a levels effect to crush the midtones out, leaving just the black and white values. Next, let's add an invert effect and a fast box blur set to something like 7 to soften up the lines just a little bit. Then, to tighten up the lines so that they look even more veiny, we'll add a CC vector blur effect with the amount set to somewhere around 25. After that, we'll add a second invert to switch everything back to black lines and a white background. Now, if we bring the opacity down temporarily so we can see what we're doing, we can adjust the texture to the first section of the face, in this case the cheek, using scale, position, and rotation. Once the placement is where we want it, we'll create a mask around the cheek area using the pen tool and add a decent amount of feathering. Then we'll crank the opacity back up to 100 and pre-compose the layer. Next, let's find a spot on the timeline where we want the effect to begin and create a marker for ourselves so we don't forget this point because we'll need to revisit it multiple times. Now let's go into the pre-comp and duplicate the vein layer and place the duplicate underneath, and let's make this one kind of a blood red to give it a bit of realism to the edges. Going into the effects control panel, let's change the fast blur to be a little more blurry to say something like 10. Let's turn off the vector blur, and let's add another tint effect, but this time change the black value to a blood red. Next, we want the veins to grow from inward to outward and along the part of the face that the effect is attached to. For this section, it's the cheek, so we want it to grow outward and down from the eye. So let's first create a white solid to use as a reveal matte. With our playhead on the marker we made, let's mask the solid around the veins, add some feathering, and add a mask path keyframe. Then let's move the playhead forward in time a few seconds and move the mask down to reveal the veins. Now we'll do the same for the masks on the 2 vein layers, but this time adding keyframes for mask expansion so that the masks in the beginning are completely collapsed and then grow outward as the solid matte travels down. After that, let's fill in the background with another white solid placed at the bottom of the layers. Since these are veins that would have blood moving through them, let's add a little bit of organic movement so it doesn't just look like a static image on his face. Let's create another white solid at the top of the layers and add a fractal noise effect. Bump the contrast up to something like 180, bring down the brightness to around -15, and under transform, adjust the scale to taste. I'm going to go with 38. Then to animate the movement over time, Alt-click on the evolution stopwatch and type the expression time times 100. Let's set the noise layer to a screen blending mode, and now the veins are subtly pulsating around. Once our vein comp is ready to go, we can jump back into our main comp and set the veins layer to multiply. So this looks pretty good so far, but what would make it look even better is if the skin was raised just a little bit wherever we see the veins. To do that, let's duplicate the veins layer and call it cheek left vein displace and place it underneath. Pre-comp again and call it cheek left veins displace pre-comp. Then jumping into the displace pre-comp, let's add a fast box blur to the displace layer set to just a low amount like 1 to soften it a little, as well as a curves effect with a little boost in the shadows just to thicken the lines a little bit. Then add an invert effect so that the skin ends up raising up instead of concaving in. Now let's jump back over to the main comp and hide the displace pre-comp. Let's select our main clip and add a CC glass effect, setting the bump map to reference the cheek left displace pre-comp, and set the softness to around 3.5 and the height to around 7. Under the light tab, let's bring down the light intensity to around 60, set the light height to 100, and using the light position button, we'll adjust the light to be above Steven to match our real onset light placement. Now under shading, we'll bring the diffuse value up to around 80, tone down the specular to around 10, raise the roughness to around 0.1, and bring the metal value all the way to 0. Now we can see a cool skin raising effect that matches our veins, giving it just a little bit more realistic detail. Alright, next we need to actually motion track the veins to Steven's face, and since there's a lot of muscles in a face, we need to account for all those little micro movements. So to do that, we're going to use the Powermesh feature in Mocha Pro. Making sure our playhead is at the marker we made earlier, let's add the Mocha Pro plugin to our clip, move it above our glass effect, and launch the program. Once we're inside Mocha, we can grab our X-spline tool and start drawing a spline around the same area that we want to track our veins to. Then under the Track tab, let's also check on Perspective and Mesh, and under Generation mode, let's change it to Uniform, set the mesh size to a smaller value like 10 to give the mesh some more vertices, Set the smoothness down to around 20 so that the vertices move a little more independently since we're dealing with more micro movements, and then hit generate mesh. After our mesh generates, we can hit track forward and Mocha will begin tracking the... I swear, every time with After Effects. Does this ever happen to you? Just me? Once the mesh is tracked, let's rename the layer to match the corresponding part of the face, move the playhead back to our origin keyframe, and then go down to the Stabilize tab and turn on Mesh Warp and set the drop-down menu from Draft to High. Then turn on the Show Planar Surface button as well as Expand to fill the frame. Now let's save the Mocha project and exit back into After Effects. Now we need to actually apply the tracking to our veins layer. Let's go back into our main clip, copy the Mocha Pro effect, and paste it onto our cheek left veins layer. Under the Module Renders tab, let's check the render box on, change Module to Stabilize Warp, and set the warp quality to high. Then let's copy this Mocha Pro effect, go into our displacement pre-comp, and paste it in above the other effects of the displaced layer. Now jumping back into the main comp, our veins and displaced veins both track together with the face. Then to blend the edges of the veins in areas like the beard so they don't look so pasted over, let's duplicate the main clip and place it at the top of the layer stack, delete the CC glass effect, and add an extract effect. Adjust the histogram to extract out the skin, but leave the darker beard and hair portions to act as a hair mat on top of the vein edges. Now we're just going to do the exact same process that we just did for all the other parts of the face that we want to add veins to, like the other cheek, the brow, and the top corners of the forehead. Now, the veins do look really cool, but it's not quite enough to sell the full Witcher effect. We need the skin to go pale as the potion sets in. To do that, let's go to our main clip and add a Lumetri color effect and go down to the HSL secondary tab. Let's set our color to be the main skin tone and also add some of the darker skin tones. Set the saturation value under correction to be 0, and then adjust the hue, saturation, and luminance sliders until the skin overall goes pale. Now let's add a clean version of our main clip to the top of the stack, and with our playhead at our marker, let's set an opacity keyframe and then about 2 seconds forward add another set to 0% and easy ease them so that the clean clip fades into the effects clips. We also want the skin around the eyes to shift into a darker sunken in look, so we're going to create a black solid and create elliptical masks around the eyes with feathering and pre-compose. Jumping inside that pre-comp, we're going to make some duplicates of the solids, adjusting the color of some to be dark brown, as well as adjust the mask expansion and feathering of each, just so the overall effect has a subtle variation on the skin. Then we're going to do the same tracking technique we did with the veins using Mocha to track the eyeshadow. Once the tracking is done and applied, let's set the eyes to be track mats referencing the main clip, set them to be Luma inverted mats, and turn the main clip back on. Then adjust the opacity of the eyeshadows starting at the marker and go from 0 to 100 matching the rest of the effect. Alright, now the last thing that we need to take this audition home is to black out the eyes and add a catch light. Let's go back into Mocha again on our main clip and create splines around the eyes from the point that they open and track forward. Then let's create a black solid, copy Mocha over, and under the Matte tab, let's click Create AE Masks. Once the masks are applied, let's add a small touch of feathering to each and animate the opacity to turn on right as his eyes open. Then to add the catch lights, we'll do the same process by creating a white solid this time, going into Mocha and tracking the pupils, copying Mocha over to the white solid, creating AE masks, and adding feathering and animating the opacity. And now we can finally go into our render panel and render this bad boy. Okay, so I think Steven has a really good shot at nailing this audition, except for he kind of wasn't feeling that good the day that we filmed and he kind of had the sniffles, but I don't know, it could help sell the look even more. Here, you be the judge. All right, so what did you think? Is Steven the next Witcher, or is he just a sniffer?